Good day, class. So for today, we're going to talk about the student's T distribution. So our objectives for today is number one, illustrate the student's T distribution, determine the T value used on a given sample size and an area, and three, identify percentiles using the Z table or using the T table. So what is student's T distribution all about? So according to the central limit theorem, the sampling distribution of a statistic like a sample mean will follow a normal distribution as long as the sample size is sufficiently large. Therefore, when we know the standard deviation of the population, we can compute a z-score and use the normal distribution to evaluate probabilities with the sample mean. But sample sizes are sometimes small and often we do not know the standard deviation of the population. When either of these problems occurs, the solution is to use a different distribution. So in this particular case class, the student state distribution is probability distribution that is used to estimate population parameters when the sample size is small. For example, the sample size is less than 30 and or when the population variance is unknown. So take note, kailan natin ginagamit ang t-distribution? Kapag, number one, kapag ang sample size daw natin ay maliit or let's say is less than 30 and the variance is unknown. Kung hindi daw given ang variance. So t-distribution class is developed by William C. Lee Gossett in 1908. He used the pseudonym or pen name student when he published his paper which describes the distribution. That is why it is called student's T distribution. He worked at brewery and was interested in the problems of small samples. For example, the chemical properties of barley. In the problem, he analyzed the sample size might be as low as 3. Okay, so if sample mean or yung X bar and S are the mean and the standard deviation respectively of a random sample size of N taken from a normally distributed population with a mean, it can be standardized as T which is equal to, ano nga ulit ang tawag natin dito? It is the, teka lang, saan na ba yung ating, ayan. Ayan, ito ay sample mean and this is the population mean divided by the standard sample standard deviation divided by the sample size n. So, yan. So, in this case, class, this formula has a t-distribution with n minus 1 degrees of freedom. So, note that the number of degrees of freedom is 1 less than the sample size. So, if the sample size n is 25, the number of degrees of freedom will be 24. Kasi nga, it would be, degrees of freedom is n minus 1. So, similarly, at a t-distribution having 16 degrees of freedom, the sample size is 16. Now, let's talk about the properties of t-distribution. Ayan. So, the t-distribution is symmetrical about the zero. That means, if you draw a segment from a peak of the curve, so from this one, down to the zero mark on the horizontal axis, the curve is divided into two equal parts of areas. The t-scores on the horizontal axis will be divided also with half of the t-scores being positive and half negative. So, it's like a normal distribution, di ba? So, when we said symmetrical, it divides the distribution into two equal parts. So, if this is 50%, automatically, the other side will also be 50%. Okay? Number 2, the t-distribution is a bell shape like the normal distribution but has heavier tails. That means it is more prone to producing values that fall far from the mean. The tails are asymptotic to horizontal axis. So each tail approaches to the horizontal axis but never touches it. So as I was saying, the t-distribution is a bell shape like the normal distribution but has heavier tail. When we said heavier tail, parang as you can see, 'di ba, parang pabigat siya. No, mas mabigat yung kanyang tail. So in this case, class, kung mapapansin natin yung kanyang yung blue line class, this is the Z distribution o yung ating standard normal curve. But the T distribution, yung pula naman, this is T distribution that which is N close to 30. So malapit na siya mag 30. So parang pa-bigger na siya, no? Papalaki na siya. And T distribution of N smaller than 30, it will be look like this one. Okay? Kaya nga siya, di ba, parang heavier tails, parang nakabuka siya ng malaki. And at the same time, yung tails ng ating T distribution will be extended in both directions. So it will be extended in both direction infinitely, but it will never touch the horizontal axis o yung ating x-axis natin, no? So naipakita ko naman sa inyo yan sa using the application of Desmos. Okay, number 3. The mean, median, and the mode of the T distribution are all equal to 0. So take note of that, ha? The mean, median, and the mode of the T distribution are all equal to 0. Next. Ayan. So the number of variance is always greater than 1. So yung variance natin is always greater than 1. Lagi pong mas mataas siya sa 1. It's not equal to 1. It's not less than to 1, but greater than 1. So it is equal to variance divided by variance minus 2, where V is the number of degrees. So it is equal to V divided by B minus 2, where V is the degrees or the number of degrees of freedom. As the number of degrees of freedom increases and approaches infinity, the variance approaches to 1. So using the formula, if the number of degrees of freedom is 10, the variance will be 1.25. Okay, so as you can see, yung ating black one, so that will be the standard normal curve. Okay, and then kung mapapansin nyo nung ito yung pink, so ang degrees of freedom natin dito sa pink is 1, and then nung tumaas siya as 3, umakyat din yung kanyang tail. And then nung 8 siya, umakyat din yung kanyang tail, and so on and so forth. Kaya nga, di ba sabi rito, as the number of degrees of freedom increases, habang lumalaki yung value ng ating DF o ng degrees of freedom, the variance approaches to 1. No? Mas lumalaki po yung ating, yung variance natin, nag-a-approach na siya sa 1. So using the formula, as I was saying nga, no, if the number of degrees of freedom is 10, we can compute the variance by 10 divided by 10 minus 2, and that will be equal to 1.25. Okay? So yung 2 po dyan is default na po yan, or parang hindi na siya nababago. Constant na po yung ating yung 2, yung value ng 2. Number 5, as the degrees of freedom increases, the T distribution curve looks more and more like the normal distribution. With infinite degrees of freedom, T distribution is same as the normal distribution. So as katulad nga na sinabi dito, kapag yung value ng ating degrees of freedom lumalaki, it will be look like as the normal distribution. So parang papunta na siya sa pagiging normal distribution niya. Number 6, the standard deviation of the T distribution varies with the sample size. So it is always greater than 1. Unlike the normal distribution which has a standard deviation of 1. Okay, take note. Sabi rito, the standard deviation of T distribution varies with the sample size. So it is always greater than 1, same with the variance. No, kung ang variance natin is greater than 1, ganun din po ang ating standard deviation. So it is always greater than 1. So unlike the normal distribution which has a standard deviation of equal to 1. Kasi 'di ba sa normal distribution natin, ang standard deviation natin is 1 at ang mean natin is equal to 0. Okay? So the total area under a T distribution curve is, of course, it is always equal to 100%. So one can say that the area under the T distribution curve represents the probability or the percentage associated with specific sets of T values. So in this case, Let us now determine the t-value given a sample size and an area. So the degree of freedom is an information from a series of data that is free to vary when estimating statistical parameters. So in this context of t-distribution, notice that df is equal to n minus 1 where n is the sample size. Okay? This clearly emphasizes the fact that the distribution really varies from sample to sample. Okay, so let's have the example number 1. So take note class, kailangan before na tayo magsagot, you have already downloaded the students T distribution table, no? So it is very important that you have that in your as your active in your or you have that copy. You have the copy of students T distribution. So illustrative example number 1, to determine the t value. So if the sample size is 11 and an area of 5%, locate the t value in the normal curve. So first, let us first write the given. So we let n be equal to 11. Take note that n is the sample size, no? And A is 5%. Yung A po, ibig sabihin, that is the area. Ang area po is 5%. And it should be converted into decimal number. So 5% in decimal is 0.05. So when we compute for the degrees of freedom, it is like n minus 1. So since ang n natin is 11, by substitution, 11 minus 1 is equal to 10. Therefore, ang ating degrees of freedom will be 10. So using the table or the t table, we have, okay, so kung mapapansin niyo dito class, we have one tail and two tails. So dun lang po tayo sa one tail. So we're going to get the t value in the normal curve using the t table. Okay? So in this case, ang una nating ang nasa taas, that will be the area. Take note, ang nasa taas, that will be the area, and the degrees of freedom will be on the left side of the t table. Okay? Okay. So in that case, we have 0.05. So same lang kung paano natin kinukuha yung area doon sa z table. And the degrees of freedom is 10, which is ayan. Ang gagawin lang natin is to get their intersection. Okay? So ang intersection nila will be 1.8112. So in that particular case, that will be here. Okay? So t is equal to 1.812. So nandito po siya banda. Okay? So yan po yung ating t tables o yung t value po natin. Okay? So that will be the t value. So again, yung t value po natin at yung 5%, ito lang po yan. Okay, so yung value po natin dyan, that will be this part. Okay, so yan lang po yung ating t value. Yung area ng ating, yung 5% po na tinutukoy dyan. Next. Okay. Determine the t value if the sample size is 15 and an area of 1%. So locate the value in the normal curve. So same thing lang po yung gagawin natin. First, we have to write all the necessary or the given. We have n is equal to 15 and a is equal to 1%. So we have to convert 1% into a decimal number, and that is 0.01. And the degrees of freedom will be 14 because we have already subtracted 1 from 15. So using the table, we have 0.01. Okay, ito siya. And then we have 14 here. And their intersection will be 2.624. So ito po yung kanyang t table. Take note class na ito pong nandito, it's not the area. Okay, it is not the area. It is the value of t. Yung nasa loob po, itong nasa table po natin, it's the value of t. It's not the area. Kasi given na po yung ating area. Okay? So, yung 1% po dyan, asan po yan? Pag sinade po natin yung 1% na yan, it is this one. Yan, yung paliit na part na yan. So, yan po yung ating, Okay, so now, let's have the identifying the percentile using the t-table. So using the knowledge of the t-distribution and the t-table itself, we're now able to find the percentile of a certain t-distribution. Recall that the percentile is defined as a point or a value in the distribution such that a given percentage of scores observation fall below it. In the context of t-curve, below it means to the left or t itself. Take note when we said below, it means to the left of t itself. So let's have the example. So if the sample size is 10 and the 95th percentile of the t-distribution, all we have to do is to know the dito, let's get the 95 percentile of the t-distribution. So first, let's get the difference of degrees of freedom. So ang degrees of freedom natin is 9 kasi 10 minus 1 is equal to 9. The area of the entire curve is 1. Okay, this implies that the area of the right of the 95 percentile of is 0.05. Okay, note that the 99th percentile is known as 95%. So we're talking about 95 percentile. Okay, so since we have 100%, so 100 minus 95 is equal to 5%. Now, so pag kinonvert natin si 5%, it will be 0.05. Okay, so in that case, we will be having 0.05 and ang ating degrees of freedom is 9. Okay? And then their intersection will be 1.833. So it will be look like this one. Ayan. So, yan po yung ating T distribution. So, that will be, ang ating T value is 1.833. So, ito po yan. And then, since ang hinahanap natin is 95%, ito po yung ating shishadan. Kasi that's 95%. Okay? Yung 5% po na natitira, ito po yung sabi natin, ito po yung part na yan. Okay? So, that will be example number 1. So, now, let's go to illustrative example number 2. So, in this case, class, if the sample size is 12, find the 2.5 percentile of the t distribution. So, in this case, so let's write the given. So, let n be equal to 12. And since the degrees of freedom is equal to n minus 1, then the degrees of freedom is equal to 12 minus 1, which is equal to 11. So, note that the 2.5 percentile of the t distribution by definition is the t value that provides 2.5% or 0.025 area to the left of itself. So when the degrees of freedom of 11 and the area is equal to 0.05, take note area is 0.025, we are now able to find the t value using the t table. So in this case, ang ating area is 0.025. So ito po siya. And then ang ating degrees of freedom is 11. And then their intersection will be equal to 2.201. So notice how the t table is constructed. Okay, so the table provides t values with an area to the right if itself or if t itself. So moreover, you must have noticed that the table only bears positive values of t. Recall in the previous lesson that the t curve is symmetric about the t equal to 0. Hence, given with a positive t value, you can easily determine the location of the negative t value of the left portion of the curve by considering the idea of symmetry about 0. Although we have obtained 2.201 as the value of t using the t table, we cannot just easily say that it is the final answer that we're looking for. Note that 2.5 percentile corresponds to the area of 2.5% or 0.025 in the left portion of the curve with respect to y-axis or t is equal to 0. So using this logic, the t value corresponding to 2.5 percentile must be negative. With the idea of symmetry about 0, we therefore conclude that the 2.5 percentile of the t distribution is negative 2.201. 1. Okay? So, let's have the example number 3. Sorry, example number 3 na dapat siya, no? So, find the 99th percentile of the T distribution with 18 degrees of freedom. So, for our solution, the area of the entire curve is 1. So, this implies that the area of the right of the 99th percentile of is 0.01. So, note that 99th percentile is also known as 99%, and our degrees of freedom is 18. So, in this case, our area will be 0.01, and then our degrees of freedom will be 18, and their intersection will be 2.552. So ito po ang kanya magiging itsura. So ito po yung 0.01, yun yung area, and then yung 0.999 will be the whole almost the whole distribution. Okay, so that's all for now. I hope you learned something. Thank you and have a nice day.